may come this day, no matter the difficulties that may come this day, no matter the things that may have been said, the accusations that may be thrown, we just know that no matter what, God, you will have your way. And Lord God, we just invite your presence to rest and abide in this room, to rest and abide in this building, to rest and abide in this home, so that nothing can come in to deter or change what you're already done. Let your glory fill this house, and let your presence flood our souls, more than now and forevermore, God, because your name is great to us. In Jesus' name we pray. We say amen. Amen. And come, amen. Come on, let's give God some praise. Come on, let's give God some more. Let's glorify him today. There's some victory in this room. There's some victory in this place. And there's an opportunity for you all to understand that God's glory is manifested. You all may be seated in his presence as we're moving into this experience and into this opportunity. Because listen, there's a word for God for you today. We know it because we're here. I'm excited to see some of my folks, my Periscope folks is actually in the building, and they didn't think I knew they was on there, but I know who's who. And I thank God for them. I praise God for those who are with us on our broadcast, those that's in our internet radio. We thank God for that. And for those that don't know, and we thank God because our Syracuse family has visited with us this week, because we're looking for a move today. We just know God is in control and God is handling this process. And we cannot be hesitant in what God is doing, or can we be doubting that God is doing something? I know everyone has had a challenge this week. Everyone has had something happen this week that you're still trying to figure out why it happened. None of it made any sense. Nothing seems to be real or rational about it. But God is one of those ones, and I know they don't like this, but God is one of those people that says it is what it is. And the reason it is what it is because he is the I am that I am. So in order for things to be what they are, it's because the I am has allowed it to happen and established it in such a way that there is a formation of change that will come from the events that have occurred. So we may not fully understand them up front, but we will realize that no matter what has happened, it is done for a reason, and the reason is because God said so. And when we don't understand why things have happened the way they have, we have to realize they've happened this way because God says it is what it is, because I have to have it this way in order for something else greater to occur. It's no wrong door, wrong door, wrong door. It is a clear manifestation that we must realize that no matter what, that we are joyful, and we are looking for a greater move, or looking for a greater opportunity, looking for a greater direction in life. But it comes from us trusting that what God is doing, God is doing. It is coming from us believing, even when it doesn't make any kind of sense, to say, why are we experiencing what we're experiencing? It is because God says it is what it is. See, y'all think some dude made that up. God said that a long time ago. He told Moses, I am that I am. He made it clear from that day that he's going to do it his way. And until we submit ourselves to God's plan, submit ourselves to God's will, submit ourselves to what God has said he's going to do and trust in him, then it is what it is. Just don't work for us. We don't like to hear that. Because we get it from people that shrug their shoulders and say, hey, it is what it is. Well, no, man, it's not. You're not going to be what do you want me to do? What do you want us to do? How do you want us to respond to it? We have compassion. We feel sympathy. We feel pain. But at the end of the day, those that know that it's a part of God's plan have hope, even in a situation that seems hopeless. Because we look for the greater of God's word, not the negative. We don't dwell on what has happened. We dwell on what is the result of what has happened. We don't hold fast to the pain of the suffering. We look at the results of the victory of overcoming the suffering. So we're sitting there saying, I'm being challenged. Why am I being challenged? Why shouldn't you be challenged? I'm being tested. Why am I being tested? Why shouldn't you be tested? The type of person, Kevin, the funny thing is the one people that struggle with this is those that just don't want to seek God enough to actually get the truth of the answer that he has for them. They will sit back and wait for everyone else to tell them what God is saying. But when you seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, he'll tell you the truth. And then the problem is they don't want to hear what the truth is. Mm-hmm. They don't like the response, so they just stop talking to God and just walk around like they don't hear him. And he's tapping them on their shoulder. He's causing situations to act up. He's causing circumstances to go a different direction. And you working hard to act like you don't hear him. But God don't stop speaking. You just stop listening. Mm-hmm. And when we get to a point where we stop listening, then we cannot get upset when things turn upside down and we try to figure out what's happening. Is God doing what he's doing? Because he realizes that, there's greater for you, but you keep acting like you don't want to hear it. But you told him yes someday. Whatever that day was, that gave him the authority to say, oh, okay, you're giving me permission to turn your life upside down. Because you had already agreed to do what I said for you to do. You already said yes. Now you're saying you changed your mind. Doesn't work like that. And until people start doing that, until people start submitting to God's full will, you're going to lose a lot. You're going to lose people. You're going to lose jobs. You're going to lose friends. You're going to lose finances. You're going to lose resources. Your health is going to go in the other direction. And the whole time you'll be sitting there like, why is things going this way? Why shouldn't they be? Because you said yes to God and then said never mind. You said yes to God, but then you tried to tell God how it's supposed to be. You said yes to God, but say, well, can you fix it? Can you manifest it? We talked about this often, about Abraham and Sodom and Gomorrah, and he prayed to God to save Sodom and Gomorrah, but what he was really praying to God was saving a righteous person, which God did, and Sodom was still destroyed. Abraham wasn't distraught about the destruction of Sodom. He just realized that there was no righteous person there, and the first thought was, well, maybe Lot wasn't righteous until he saw Lot coming by. See, what we must realize, and I don't even know why I'm here today, what we must realize is the plan of God for your life is already activated. The plan of God for your life is moving towards its fulfillment, but you are trying not to go that way. You're like a spinner on a car at a stoplight. It's still moving. You're not. Oh, they'll catch that another day. Your destiny is like a spinner on a car at a stoplight. You stop, but the wheel keeps moving. Why? Because your destiny don't stop because you don't feel like doing it, or you're afraid you're going to lose something or someone, or you're hurt, or people's feelings going to hurt. God don't care. God says, I have something for you, because if you can let go of the foolishness, I'll bring you to greater places where you don't have to deal with foolishness. But we like foolish people. We hang out with foolish people. We get involved in foolish people. We get married to foolish people. We work with foolish people. Our lives are surrounded around foolish people because foolishness is the only thing we know. But when God says enough is enough, then we have to get to a place of saying, I don't need this anymore. We have to rise above the foolishness. And separate ourselves from it. Because what's happening is, and I'm going into my message now, what's happening is because we are engaged and involved in foolish people, we can't get close enough to God and invite his presence in. Because he's not going to present himself in a place that's foolish. Watch this. The reason why he doesn't show up in a place of fools is because fools could never comprehend who God really is. Amen. And because they can't comprehend who God really is, or they have rejected him in some way, shape, or form, then he will not present himself there because there's no changing of them. Because they don't have a will to subject to. They don't know what they... Watch this. The most dangerous person you can ever be around is someone that doesn't have a destiny. They'd rather sit around, watch TV all day and eat bonbons and just live off of everyone else. They don't have a destiny. But yet, you look in your circle. Some of you right now is envisioning your inner circle and realizing, wow, 4 out of the 5 in my circle are those people. And then I'm wondering why I'm not moving anywhere. Just because people stop living, you shouldn't stop. And if you are living, guess what? You'll end up driving out of that circle into one that will better suit you. Uh-oh. Y'all all right this morning? We still dealing with difference makers. I ain't changed nothing. We still in that, I just got a couple things I want to share. God told me to get them off his chest. If you have your Bibles, open with me, 2 Chronicles chapter 6. I'm going to show you something today. Because what it is that we're seeking something from God. We're not just coming here to have church. You know, it's amazing. People know that I'm a social media following kind of person. I watch what happens. I have heard more people this week be critical of musicians in the church and churches, and I heard it, and one said, and I quote, "I'm not going to church for entertainment. I'm waiting for praise and worship to sit down so I can hear a word." Mm-hmm. I was like, ooh. And the reason is because people are no longer coming for entertainment. They're looking for edification. Mm-hmm. You don't invite someone to a restaurant and they're hungry, but you don't feed them. Uh-oh. Mm-hmm. People don't come to the church for the music. They come to the church for the sound. Mm. And that's why people haven't changed. Because they're looking for the music, but they haven't found the sound. Mm-hmm. Oh, gosh. Y'all all right? Okay. 2 Chronicles 6. Y'all with me? Mm-hmm. It's only the first 2 verses. It says, "Then Solomon spoke. The Lord said he would dwell in a dark cloud. I have surely built you an exalted house, a place for you to dwell in forever." It's 2 verses that don't make sense. Especially with my topic, which is the cloud changed me. The cloud changed me. Now, we spoke about the cloud last week. We talked about the power and the presence of the cloud. We talked about the importance of the cloud. We talked about that the cloud was so great at that time that it filled the temple to a point, as it says in chapter 5, 1 verse before this, that it took over and that the ministers of the gospel could not do anything. Said the cloud was so great in the temple that they could not function in their ministerial position. They couldn't do their priestly duties. And I kept looking and I was like, wait a minute. It's like I start thinking about how the presence of God is so great that you find yourself incapable of doing anything. You find yourself incapable of getting things done. You find yourself in a place where you can't function in these things. And I was like, man, that's what I'm looking for. But God said, look further in what I'm saying here. And as I looked further in it, I began to realize that there was something wrong with what's happening here. The cloud had filled the temple to the point that the priests not only couldn't function, but the priests couldn't get in. Okay. So it was like they created a place for God's presence to dwell, but it was a place that they couldn't get in. Uh-oh. So I'm thinking about the cloud changed me because it's something that the cloud has to do to change me. And I'm going to share some things with you, and I'm going to tie it in. I got to nugget. Watch this. So in the passage, God showed up. He dwelled in the temple, as it says, in a dark cloud. We see that, right? The temple in a dark cloud. And this was done as a sign of his presence, and yet the people could not look upon the glory. They could not look upon the glory. They could only be assured that the glory was there. We said the cloud, as we said in the last verse of chapter 5, it says that the cloud was the presence of God. His glory was in the cloud. We know that. So what has happened is this cloud has filled the temple. And the people are seeing the cloud. But they're identifying the cloud as his glory. But they don't see his glory. Mm-hmm. Uh-oh. They don't see his glory. They know, they identify the cloud to be his glory because that's what they understand it to be. But they don't see his glory. They see the cloud. And to them, they say that this is God's presence. This glory filled the cloud. Because they know it filled the cloud, but they don't see it because it says a dark cloud. And if you understand it from, you look at it, this cloud is not like just a darkish brown or a fog or a mist that we're in. It is a cloud that is so dark that it has no light, meaning it is just void. Mm-hmm. So what happens is you could see into the temple what was there. But when his presence showed up, it was a void, as if whatever was there had been consumed by such a dark cloud that nothing existed. So all they were looking into was just darkness. But wait a minute. We identify darkness as evil. That's what they say, right? Mm-hmm. So if it was evil, but yet he dwells in this dark cloud, how could that be evil? It wasn't. It was his glory. It was a void. because evil can be seen. I'm going to leave that alone. But there's a dark cloud. It's a void. It is like, he is literally erased what existed there, but yet it wasn't erased. It was just there. It's as if you take a black tarp and just cover over something. You can't see what's under it because all you see is the black, correct? So this is what's happening. But it filled it to a point, and the power was so great, they couldn't function. They couldn't function. The cloud in the Old Testament showed a limited connection to God. Watch this. The people were seeking assurances that God was there, but they were not mature enough to see God's glory. This happened back even with Moses, where he presented himself in a cloud, and the people couldn't see him, but they heard him. So the thing about it, we must realize in the Old Testament way of thinking, they weren't concerned about seeing God, they just wanted to hear him. If they can hear God, they knew he existed. So when he presented himself in the dark cloud, his voice was not taken away from them, but his presence was. Because they weren't mature enough to really see his glory. But they just knew it existed. Y'all all right? I'm challenging folks. They're looking at me with 3 hairs this morning. See, in other words, they wanted to see God, but not his glory. They could not understand that the wonders of God dwelling in his glory, for his glory was he revealing himself beyond the limited visitation of filling the temple. They couldn't see it. To them, it was, okay, the temple is full. It's God's presence. Okay, let's move on. But isn't the temple a place of worship? But if his presence filled the temple, they couldn't get in. So now the temple is no longer a place of worship. It was just a place where his presence resided. And there's a misconnect there. How can you worship him when you can't get in? But he wasn't putting them out. He was just filling the place. Y'all all right? All right. I'm messing your heads up because y'all looking at me like, what the... Y'all wasn't ready for it. It's too heavy. Is it too heavy? Should I lift it? Should I lift it? I'm trying to bring the cloud. Y'all all right?
Bring the cloud.
Bring the cloud. Amen. That's what I'm talking about. Come on now. Rain. So, as scripture revealed, once God filled the temple, the priest could not work within it. That was in the last verse of chapter 5. He says, and the ministers, and it says, and the priests could no longer minister in the temple. It says that. I'm not making this up. So because it's saying that, it's saying, okay, they can't function in the temple. And let me preface to say at this point, this is the reason why most churches don't really strive to bring the presence of God in such a way, because they still feel the need to have to get that word out. So when he does show up, it's like, not now, God, I got to get this word out. You gave me this word, I got to get it out. So they're saying to God, not now. But what God is saying, when I show up, I don't need you to do nothing else. Because my answers is in my glory. Again, the cloud in the Old Testament symbolized the fact that God was hidden even in his self-revelation. Let me say it again. But the cloud also symbolized the fact that in the Old Testament times, God was hidden even in his self-revelation. What was the self-revelation? Him revealing himself as the cloud. But you heard him, but you still couldn't see him. Not even his glory. You just knew it was there. I hate to say it this way, but this is the best analogy that I could give you right now. It's as if someone who has suddenly been blinded can say, I know it's there, but I can't see it. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. In the Old Testament, the cloud was just that. So you had to trust what you didn't see, as long as you heard him. And that's how we grew up. We grew up in just believing in the existence of God, believing that God's power was reigning, but because we couldn't see him, we just trusted what we were told. We was trusting in what we heard. We was trusting in what we wanted to believe in. But at some point in time, you've reached a place in your life and said, hold up, wait a minute, wait, what? No, I need to see God, not just hear about him. So what had happened, Kim, was that for history, people came to church because they wanted to hear about God. But somewhere, something happened around the time of the Pentecostal movement where people said, I don't want to just hear God, I want to see him for myself. But I can't see him because we're so busy building a temple to bring his presence in such a dark cloud that it's so consuming that we can't function in it. It's like the cloud is coming and we got to leave, and like we've been evacuated because of a fire alarm. And we're standing on the outside of the presence of God, outside of the temple, praising and worshiping him, but we're not in the presence. We're out. That's what I'm trying to help you. We're not in the presence. They're outside the temple worshiping him because he's in the temple. Okay, y'all understand what I'm saying? He filled the temple to the point that they couldn't function in the temple. So Solomon stood outside of the temple and said, God is pleased with what we have built. Because his presence has dwelled here. But he's on the outside saying it. He's not in the midst.
Right.
But did not in the New Testament he says, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am in the midst. So if he's in the midst of 2 or 3 gathering, then there should be a change between standing on the outside, looking at the presence of God that we can't really see, and being in the midst of his presence. Something had to happen. That's why I said the cloud changed me. And the reason it changed me because I saw something that I didn't see before. Because even though the cloud was dark enough that there's a void, I saw something. Y'all not hearing me. Even though the cloud was a void, it was completely black. It was non-existent to the lay person, but I saw something. Tell somebody I saw something. Because there's something in the cloud that we have to look for, and it gives us access to dwell within the cloud, which is his glory. But you cannot dwell in his glory if you're not willing to allow the cloud to change you. Because I truly believe that the presence of God did not prevent them from gaining access. They just never had a desire to get in there. They just wanted God to be with them, but they didn't want to be with God. Come on, y'all, look at the history of their life. They was always around God, near God, close to God, but were they with God? As I was teaching my class, God was always with them. That was never the issue. But were they with God? Yeah. Leave that alone. So, again, we realize that God would reveal himself, but only in a limited form. This void, this dark. Couldn't see him. You knew he was there, but you couldn't see him. Which didn't make sense to me. And this is why. When he spoke to Moses, he spoke to him in a bush that was burning but not yet consumed. So it wasn't a dark cloud, it was a bush that was burning. But he did tell Moses that when he walks by, he can't see him, he only see his back. But when he saw that, he still saw something. So Moses had the ability to see his glory in a different way, but the people did not. But this is the life of David and the life of Solomon. David, a man of worship, and Solomon, a man of wisdom. Somewhere along the line there, they should have had enough in them to really understand how to connect with God in a different level. And yet they didn't. And yet they didn't. He wrote Psalms. They wrote Proverbs. They wrote all these instructional things, but yet they still just knew of God and they felt him, but they didn't have that glorified movement. Uh-oh. Because watch this, I'm not messing with you. You can think about, at the time of David and the time of Solomon, we didn't hear God showing up in the time like he did in Abraham's time. We didn't see God walking with them in that time. We just knew that David believed and loved on God. But he didn't have that one-on-one conversation. He just had the belief in God. And building the temple was like, okay, because the presence is in there, we just know he's there. But Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Moses and Joseph and all, they talked with God. They believed. They heard God called them by name. Right. Something happened where the people of God went from talking to God directly to just believing they're hearing him. Sounds like the stages of faith. The thing that got you into God was you heard him directly. But somewhere along the line, you got so deep that you don't hear him no more. You just believe you hear him. Ooh, I'm sorry. I might lose some folks on this one. And because we get so deep, we miss something. So here's the question. If the praises were lifted up outside the temple, why do we go to the temple? Why do we go to church if we can't get access in the church to feel the presence? Because he pushes us out if we're in there and he shows, why go? We could just stand on the outside and say, praise him. Why go? Because we're seeking a deeper relationship and a greater connection to God, and we're seeking that access where our praises are being lifted up within the church, not just on the outside. And plus, our access is different than what was happening here in this passage. That's why I said the cloud changed me. But they didn't just change me. The cloud changed everything. It changed everything. Think about it. It says in chapter 5, verse 13 and 14, it says that the house of the Lord was filled with a cloud, so that the priest could not continue ministering because of the cloud. For the glory of the Lord filled the house of God. So he's saying, okay, the glory of the Lord filled the house. The priest couldn't minister because of it. So they literally were evicted by what they were asking to show up. Could it be, let me put this little snippet in your mindset, could it be that the reason that they couldn't function anymore is because they weren't qualified in the first place? Now, I could assume that. I could simply assume that. But they were the tribe that God had called to do the work. Or maybe they weren't ready yet. Because they're responsible. Remember, the Levites were responsible for the caretaking of the temple. But the priests were Aaron and his sons. So maybe they were trying to be priests when they should have just been Levites. Yeah. So again, the problem is that the cloud filled the temple in such a manner that nothing else could be done. And that's fine. But that's not good for me because I seek something greater. I seek a glory of God that is so great that I can't function. But I don't seek it on the outside of God. I don't see God. I don't see God telling me I don't have access to him. Why would he give me a glory that is not connected directly to him, but it's just off away from him? That's like going to the hospital and they send me to a doctor that's not there. Right. So my healing is not in the place that I've gone to. I have to leave where I went for the healing to get my healing. But yet they're still connected to the place I went to get my healing. I don't need a referral from God. I need that glory where it changes me, transcends me, causes me to be dysfunctional. I want to experience a glory that evicts me from that. I don't want to experience a glory that evicts me from the house of worship. I want to experience a glory that invites me in. We have enough things and enough people that are evicting people out of the house of God. We don't need God doing it, but he's not doing that. He's saying if you're not qualified, you can't get in. It's not elitism. It's not an entitlement. It's saying that if your worship is not genuine, you can't dwell in his presence. It's too much. But watch this. I want you to think about this. David and Solomon weren't trying to have a relationship with God at this moment. They were just trying to build the temple that he told them to build, so there's a place for him to dwell on earth. So they did their job. He says, thank you. You know, you build a clubhouse for a kid, they go in, they close the door behind them. You ain't welcome. You built it, though. Now, from that point on, you got to knock on the door and say, you need to come in the house and get something to eat. And they open the door and say, nope, and close the door. And you like, I will cut the tree down. I ain't even cut the tree. I'm going to cut the tree down. You knock the door, tell me no. Knock on the door. Who is it? You know who it is. You in my yard. What's wrong with you? But when we think about it, that's what happened here. They established a place for God's presence to dwell. He filled it to a point that they couldn't come in. And now from that point on, they had to come to him and prostrate. Glory, 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 Lord God Almighty. They had to come to him in a level of worship that they couldn't handle in the past because they never experienced it before. And it began to change them from being people that was in some kind of rule in religiosity into a place of relational connection. Oh, y'all all right? And here's the thing. But see, the cloud, like I said, the cloud wasn't bad. There was purpose behind it. Why? I'm glad you asked. I don't have all my point people here today, but those are like points. I give you one. Fine. Here's one. The cloud limits visibility.
Wow.
So I said the cloud changes, right? It changed me. Why? It limits my visibility. You'll look to be like, what? It's like every week. I'm waiting on one of the weeks where you just be like, you ain't surprised. If I get that look, it might be a problem. Okay, verse 6:1 says, but then it'd be like, you ain't speaking to me, you ain't helping me. I could have stayed home for this one. Chapter 6, verse 1 says that Solomon spoke. The Lord said he would dwell in a dark cloud. We already said how dark the cloud was. The cloud was a void, right? Y'all good? Yeah. It's God's glory, right? We don't exactly know when God's glory shows up, do we? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We know when God's glory shows up because His presence fills the room. But why does He do it? It's because it's done for a change. God's glory doesn't come in the midst of a process; it comes in between them. Oh man. Okay, let me break this down simply. Solomon speaks of a cloud. Not just any cloud, a cloud that is dark. Thick, black, dark, voided, can't see nothing. Okay? But Solomon's declaration was addressed to God, not to the people. He wasn't speaking to us. In the first two verses he's talking to God. He's saying to God, I know you said you would dwell in a dark cloud, so I see it. So it must be you, so you're here. It's just the people around him heard what he was saying. But he was talking directly to God in these first two verses. These two verses we're talking about. He wasn't talking to people. He was talking to God. And he was recognizing the thick darkness as a manifestation of God's grace, presence among his people. And then he affirmed that he built the temple so that God could dwell in it. He wasn't saying to the people, look what I did. God's there. No, he was saying, God, I see you. And I'm glad that you are welcomed and moved in to a place that I built for you. And then in verse 3, he begins to speak to the people and say, give God praise. But I said it limits his visibility. But let me get back into the darkness. This is important because when we look back in Moses, the Lord said to Moses on Mount Sinai, behold, I come to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you and believe you forever. So Moses told the words to the people of the Lord. God said right then and there, I'm coming to a thick cloud so the people can believe in you. Which meant that Moses was the only one at that moment qualified to really see God. But the cloud was there so everyone else could recognize that if they wanted to hear from God, they had to hear through Moses. So he had given Moses a level of authority. So when I say that it limits our visibility, it limits the visibility of those who haven't sought God with a contrite heart to receive an opportunity to see his glory. Didn't I say in the New Testament that he'll reveal the hidden things? The hidden things is his glory. There's so much in the glory that we cannot see. So he prevents him, so he limits our visibility. Because it had been known through the history of his people that the thick cloud was a symbol of the presence of God, Solomon immediately took the event as a sign that God was pleased. Okay, watch this. He didn't assume that it was God. He went on what history told him. Said everywhere God showed up, it was a thick cloud. So if it was a thick cloud because my history told me that, then this must be God. Are y'all hearing me? They say this must be God because he allowed his wisdom to interact with his intellect, but yet it didn't interact with his faith. He just said this must be God. And then he looked at the people and said, now you must acknowledge because this is how he shows up. When you see this cloud, it's God's presence. But what was going on is, what was he believing in his heart? Was it God or was it not? We don't really know. Yes, we do. Because God showed up. He filled the temple. Because at the moment that the priest cannot function, that's God. I'm going to tell you that now. Again, the darkness is not an evil or demonic sign. It is reflective of the omnipresence of God. So much that we find ourselves in his presence, we cannot and should not be able to see anything else. So if we focus on God and God alone, then we should be able to trust in him enough to not fear when we find ourselves in the dark. Mm-hmm. Again, if we focus on God and God alone, watch this, mm-hmm. then we should be able to trust in him enough to not fear when we find ourselves in the dark. The dark is always considered a void. Even in the beginning, he said, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In those passages, he says, and let there be light. And there was light. So he began in a void. In what? A darkness, which was what? A dark cloud. So God always dwelled in a dark place because God had no form that we could readily identify. So whenever you found that form that consumed a place in such a darkness, it wasn't an accident, it was God. But the amazing thing about it is the one time that God's presence shows up is that time between you finishing what you've already done and preparing to start something new. Mm-hmm. It's that time in between. So when you find yourself getting to a place where it seems like everything is falling into place, but then all of a sudden you don't know what's coming next, it's because God has put himself in front of you so that you can't see what's next because he's still working it out. Mm-hmm. So there's the void. The dark cloud. So when they stood before the temple of God and his presence was in there and they couldn't see what was in there, it's because he was manifesting a change that they weren't ready for because they were still seeking him in an old way. So the cloud changes because when it limits your visibility, it means it prevents you from seeing what's coming, but you need to be in expectancy that it will happen. Am I making sense to y'all? Mm-hmm. You sure? Is y'all quiet today? It's showing you something about God. It's showing you more of him. Watch this. It's showing you more of him even when you don't see any of him. The dark cloud is showing you more of him even when you don't see any of him. That doesn't make sense. Yes, it does. Because it's dark cloud, because the cloud is a void. And because he has the ability to consume everything around him, including light itself, he is erasing what you thought was going to happen until he's ready to reveal to you what will. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing more in the void than you would if you weren't. Because if he wasn't in between you and what's going to happen, then you're always preparing for what's coming and expecting that what was going on was going to happen, even though what was coming might not have been his plans. But once you put your faith in front of you, once you put your faith in front of you, what God does is he sits in between what you thought was going to happen and what shall happen. And until he knows that you're ready to accept or you've been equipped for what is to come, he raises up and steps out of the way so that you can see what's happening because now you're ready to go forward. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean he's gone. It just means he has now moved his glory so you can see what he has glorified. Oh, y'all all right? So the void is that thing of, okay, I've finished preparing for it. Now, that's why, watch this. That's why when Christ was out of the tomb and Mary wanted to hug him, he said, touch me not, for I've yet to be with my Father, because he was still in the void. There was an incomplete work being done that had to be finished first before he could reveal himself completely to them. That's why he could walk amongst the disciples on the road and talk with them and they not recognize it was him because they were still seeing God's glory, which was something that they couldn't recognize, and it covered Christ to a point where they didn't know it was him. But they heard him. And it wasn't until he left that they realized that it was him. But when he showed up at them in the upper room and he revealed the rooms, he was no longer hidden. He was no longer hiding. He was no longer in a place that could not be seen. Now he was revealed. Now he was in a place that could be seen. And because of such, God has presented himself to them, and now they've seen God's glory. But wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. There was no dark cloud, right? There was no dark cloud. The reason the cloud wasn't there is because Christ became God's glory on the earth. Christ became God's glory on the earth. Watch this. John 1:14 says, the word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. Oh, there it is. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. So what happened is, in the Old Testament, in the days of David, the days of Solomon, the only glory we could understand was what filled the temple. But when in the life of Christ, once he was born in the manger, he was the temple and God's glory all at one. That's why we hear it say the kingdom of God is within you. Because God had taken it and said, instead of me filling a building that you built and preventing you from functioning within it, I am now going to reduce my presence to fill you. So if I can fill you, then what happens is now my glory is now in you. You can be glorified by my life, glorified by me. And instead of you seeking me everywhere and trying to build a temple that fills my presence but not you, I'm now filling you and making you the temple. And because now you are the temple, his glory is filling you. But wait a minute, this is not even New Testament thinking. Ezekiel said, my dwelling place also will be with them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. So he was saying, I don't need you carrying a tabernacle anymore. You are it. Okay, y'all still looking at me crazy. John 17 says, I have given them the glory. Christ said in John 17, I have given them the glory you gave me, so that they may be as one, because we are one. There it is. So what he had done in the midst of all this is said, I don't need you building me another tabernacle. You are the tabernacle because my glory dwells within you. And if my glory dwells within you, your life should be transcended because of it. If my glory dwells in you, there should be some changes in your life because of it. We're trying to glorify God when God says be glorified. Oh, man. Okay. All right. Can I go deeper? Watch this, Don. Because he says, be glorified. The reason we never strive for that is because we automatically assume that says, be like God. No, the glory of God is already within us. So when we're being glorified, we're not being glorified. He is, because he's in us. So when the glory emanates from us, it's really God, not us. People will only see him through his glory, even though it's coming from us. It's the illuminating power of God flowing from us. So it says, be glorified. So when we're saying God be glorified, what we're doing is surrendering ourselves. There's a painting by a black painter, and it's a black man standing in a prostrate manner with an illuminated cross on his chest, and there's light coming from the cross coming out of his mouth, eyes, and from out of him this light is coming, and it's the illumination of God, his glory coming revealed from him. So it's so bright you don't see the person, you see God. So what was happening before is they were trying to build a temple where people could see God's presence in it but didn't have access because there was too many ropes around it. But what God did in the New Testament, he said, I brought my son so that you might have life and life more abundant. You can only have the life when the glory is in you. So he says, Christ says, God, I gave them the glory you gave me. So if Christ gave them the glory that he had, then what he has done is given permission for us to actually be filled as a temple was, but yet it doesn't stop us from doing his will. It stops us from doing everything against his will. Mm-hmm. Y'all with me? Mm-hmm. So what's happened is the Old Testament, the tabernacle, they couldn't function because his presence showed up. The New Testament, we can function because his presence is in us. Mm-hmm. So his presence is in us. We should be walking in his glory. They were trying to walk in his glory by the mere manifestation of him showing up in the tabernacle, in the temple. But we can walk in his glory because his glory is in us. His presence and power dwells within us. So therefore, we can function effectively if we embrace it and subject ourselves and allow him to lead us. That's why the negativity of people should never bother you if God's glory is in you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, say that.
But you shouldn't be subjected to it either.
Mm-hmm.
So I already said that the cloud limits visibility, but I've already spoken on my second point. I'm sorry. The cloud filled our presence and revealed our promise. The cloud filled our presence and revealed our promise. Why? Because again, we went from being in an Old Testament way of thinking by trying to build a place for God to reside, when God says the only thing I need you to build is you. Even Paul said, when we're in Christ, we're a new creation. The old is gone, the new has come. He said, live a life worthy of a call. These are two different things. He said, lay aside the weight to run the race set before us. All these things he's saying is that you don't have to build a building, build you. So once you build you, I will fill you. And when I fill you, I will reveal my promise to you. She said, Masi. But that's the thing that you're missing. We're missing the total comprehension of God. God is filling us constantly.
Mm-hmm.
He is preparing us constantly. But we keep limiting God because we don't believe that what he's doing is really filling us. We're just functioning. But when we realize that his glory is manifested in us, we're not glorified, God is. So that means that the things that we touch, the places that we go, the lives that we reach, did not the apostles, it says, and even their cloud healed them. Because it wasn't their cloud. I mean, their shadow healed them. It wasn't their shadow. It was the shadow of the glory in them. The apostle said, silver and gold I do not have, but what I have I give unto you. And told him to walk. So he realized that there is something in him that, wow. So my question is, why are you sick? If the glory is in you.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you struggling and stressing if the glory is in you? Why are you letting people get on your nerves? Why haven't you taken authority over a situation if the glory is in you? Why haven't you claimed your opportunity? Why haven't you changed those things that is destroying your very being if the glory is in you? The glory is authority. And we become weakened to people that don't believe in God or I should follow God in a limited capacity. The ones that say, I have a spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Which means I don't need to go to church because I don't like rules.
Yeah.
I don't like rules. It's not rules, it's standards. You don't like the standards, that's fine, don't live up to them. But don't try to stop someone else from them.
Mm-hmm.
I got a knife and a blade called truth and joy. So when they come and try to change my standards, I slit their throat. Say, stop. Say, wait, why you do the throat? So they can stop talking. Because the worst person where somebody talking that ain't got no future. It's depressing. Even the Falcons got hope of beating the Patriots. They got a future. But when you sit somewhere like the Cowboys sitting at home talking about, I'm going to win the Super Bowl this year, no, that don't make no sense.
Mm-hmm.
I say that because when you realize there's a cloud, we have to have the ability to know that if there's a cloud, the cloud is there to change things. Clouds show up when a storm's coming. But a storm is never negative nor is it destructive to us. It's destructive to everything around it. When you're a cheerful, someone said to me recently, he said, man, there's a cloud near. There's a cloud nearby. I said, I know. They said, there's just a cloud. I said, I know. They said, are you worried? I said, nope. They said, why? I said, because the storm is coming. And I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to worry about it because the storm is not going to destroy me. Because I'm not doing anything to play with it. Because, see, I'm not in the boat. I'm on the water saying, come on, bring the rains. It's people that don't realize what's happening that are going to get caught up in the storm. We have weather chasers. They do that in a heartbeat. They do that in a heartbeat. They chase storms because they like to follow the storms. I'm a storm chaser. I'm a find a storm. Why? Because I know God is doing some changing in their life. So I'm a follow a storm. But you have to realize and recognize that in the life that you're living, that if you're not willing to subject yourself to what is coming, you'll never ever see what's going to happen. God's glory fills us. We don't have to worry about the dark cloud filling the tabernacle any longer. We can be glorified and we can give God praise because the glory is now filling us. And when he fills us, it should change us and transform. Let me say this. It is impossible for you to walk in the power and the authority of God and have God fill you without you acknowledging that God is in charge, God is leading you, God has given you the authority, and his presence is what transcends and transforms everything you do. If you're still trying to be in complete control and not subjecting yourself to the precepts of God, then you can't say that you're walking in any kind of faith because you're trying to tell God what to do when God is saying, I'm going to let you finish because I'm going to give you thy daily bread. You trying to store it up like Save-A-Lot. I'm trying to give you daily bread. What that mean? That we must come to him daily. Because the most successful people are led by faith, not by fortune. Don't get it confused. They had fortune, but it was led by faith. So when you understand that what is in front of you is determining who you are and how you shall become, then you'll realize that when God's glory rose up from the temple, it's because his presence will still exist there, but then in a manner that we can actually come in and worship him and be changed when we come in and changed when we leave. But now, because we're New Testament thinking, new dispensational thinking, because we follow after Christ, we realize that Christ says that I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father but through me. But he also says, as we said in the passage in John chapter 17:22, he said that I have given them the glory you have given me. So now we are realizing that we have the ability to change our very existence and our very life simply because we're walking in the belief to know that if God gave Christ the glory and he walked on earth with the glory and he poured the glory into us, that the comforter is just there as a manager of the glory. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Did I do that? I'm sorry. I hope I ain't messing nobody up. The comforter is just a manager of the glory. He is the one that God is saying, okay, get these people from, tell them stop. Left turn, Clyde. Left turn. Because he is determining where we go. God says, Christ said I must go, and when I go, a comforter will come. Who is it come? To guide us, direct us, lead us, prepare us, equip us. But we can't get into that until we realize that God's glory is in us.
Mm-hmm. That's the key.
Everything in your life should always be changing because God should always be leading. And if you're following God, if you're trusting in God, then there should be some very changes in your life. That's why when I hear people saying, God is not through with me yet. What does that mean? God will never be through with you because God has a covenant to keep you. The question is, are you through with God yet?
Yeah.
Because watch this. Now I mess with you. If God was not through with us, then we would have his glory no matter what we do. If God was not through with us, we would be able to do whatever we want with all the sin that we live in. But if that was the case, then the glory would still be in the tabernacle and we wouldn't have access. The cloud changed me. Why? It showed me that I no longer have to build a temple outside of me in order for the glory to rule. The temple is where we bring people in one accord as a community to let all the glory that's within us to reign together. The only way we could ever get that one sound is when the glory that's within us connects with each other in one room. I.e., Pentecost. The moment where the glory of God that was in each individual disciple came together and started speaking in such a way that the people outside of the room heard what God wanted them to hear, and they were changed. Mm-hmm. Who are you changing with your prayers? Who are you changing with your presence in God? Who are you changing with your life transformation work? Who are you changing in the midst of it? Is God's glory being revealed in the process, or are you just staying in that manifested way and being confused and lost? We all are going through, it's so quiet. Well, we all are experiencing challenge. Why? Because God is saying, I need you to allow my glory to show you what shall be done. Mm-hmm. But we still listening to man, dog. We're still listening to people. Because we're afraid to go to God directly. Because here's the thing. Again, I said it before. I say it all the time. We don't want to hear what God got to say. Mm-hmm. Not now, God. Man, it's quiet. Mm-hmm. I wasn't trying to hit no toes. Did I hit toes? Mm-hmm. I wasn't trying to step on no toes. Did I hit your toes? I'm sorry. A couple of them, all right. I ain't getting no whole feet, did I? I'm sorry. Okay. Then that's the glory. And watch this, and I'm finishing with this. The other thing about the glory is this. The cloud, why did it change? Because the cloud will cause people to distance themselves from you because they can't handle the glory that's in you. The glory once within you, you don't have to tell anybody what's going on. You can walk in the room, they'll run. Now here's the petty side of me, hashtag petty. I like it. I ain't gonna lie to you. I like coming in the room and people getting uncomfortable and fleeing like cockroaches. And people's like, what just happened? Said nothing. They just can't handle me being in the room. They say, well, what do you mean? I say, no, my bad. I'm sorry. It's not that they can't handle me being in the room. They can't handle the fact that I have standards and I have stayed obedient to God, and God is walking with me and through me and in me, and they don't like it. Because they want to stay exactly who they are. And they don't want to be around me. Because they know every time I open my mouth, it's God speaking, not me. So they flee like roaches. Human people, I said it right. People that can't handle the isolation will compromise just to fit in. People that can't handle the isolation of their faith will compromise to fit in. Because they just got to have some folks around them. They just got to be friendly. I'm not friendly. I've just never been. I'm just me. Shut up. Take your butt back to New York. On a skateboard and a hockey puck. But the thing is, I've never been intended to be. Because when he said to me, Ezekiel, he called me Ezekiel, I said, oh Lord. Because Ezekiel wasn't friendly. Ezekiel was like, look at it. So I realized that's my life. That's my life. Stay in your room. Don't do that. Stay in your room. You know I will see you next week. Don't do it. The thing about it is, was I bothered by that? No, not at all. Because here's the thing. There is a difference between intentionally being me and just being faithful enough to God to know that anything you say is just going to upset somebody, even if you say good morning. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference. People avoid. And people say, well, that's not God. Oh, it's absolutely God. Mm-hmm. Because the enemy will flee. And those that are dealing with a sin state will flee. And I mind you, I've heard them say directly to me, man, I can't be around you. Okay. No problem. Man, I'll talk to you later. No problem. And then man, please. That phone won't ring. Does it bother me? Absolutely not. The ones that totally blows my mind is those that just swear up and down they can handle it. But they'll come around me for about 30 seconds. I can clock it. And then they got to go. They find something. They discomfort. They uncomfortable. They disorganized. They don't know what to do. They walking around in circles. And I just laugh at it because my thing was like, you don't have an issue with me. You don't like the God in me. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. They say, I love God. No, you don't. Because if you did, you wouldn't have a problem with the God in me. Mm-hmm. It's not two different gods. It's the same one. Mm-hmm. So you can't sit there and say, I love God. You love God? What's wrong with you? Mm-hmm. You can't say that, but then you get around someone who God is leading you, using and filling, and be like, I can't be around you. Then you don't love God. So what's wrong with you? Mm-hmm. I'm a spirituality demon killer. That I break the chains of that demon of spirituality. Either hold accountable or stay home. That's why I realize that no matter what, when the power of God is in me, the glory is in me, I'm never concerned or never worried about what anyone says or do. I'm just going to function the way I can. But once you start compromising, God stops functioning. Let me say it again. Once you start compromising, God stops functioning. What does that mean? God is not one that cannot function. He chooses to stop functioning in that capacity in you because you begin to compromise the work because you don't want to give up the things that he says give up for the better that he has for you. Oh, man. Moses gave up his family to go back to Egypt to get people that had no respect for him at all. Ask Jethro. Jethro's like, man, you left your wife and kids with me, man. What's wrong with you? He was doing God's will. We're not willing to give up what he says give up. Because it's like this. Unless the church says, if you give up the Toyota, God will give you a Bentley, you be out there trying to give that car away. But if they come to you and say, the Lord told you to get rid of the car, wait a minute, I got to get to work. How am I going to get to work? How am I going to get my kids around? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? And they say it don't matter. God said give it up. Watch this. You give it up because he has something better. Or you don't give it up and lose it. Because either way, it's gone. Either way, it's gone. And there's no delay on it. It's going to happen. The one thing I understand about God is do it the first time. The glory filling you will show you to do it the first time. Tell somebody, do it the first time.
Do it the first time.
When you get the second, third, fourth, or fifth time, it just gets exponentially worse. And about it, because we taught this years ago, stripped to be dressed. I just like to be undressed. I don't need to be stripped. Stripped is forced. Meaning they rip those things off of you. And people don't understand, when did they rip the clothes off? Before he got whipped. And then put them back on. See, I'm one of the ones, okay, God, you need me to do this? Yes, no problem. Yeah, sure. Naked and not ashamed. What's up? So that he could just smack me on the back of my hand instead of that whip with that blades in the end. But when you sit there like, well, no, God, I changed my mind. I mean, oh, what was that? Oh, that was one whip. Well, God, I'm saying, man, what people going to think? They're going to see it, bop, bop. Because the more that you resist, the worse that it becomes. And you may not see it because you thinking it's all going to happen in like a tornado or a hurricane style. Oh, no. He going to beat you over time. Beat you over time. Until you reach that point where you say, I'm pretty much had enough of this. And say, oh, really? So now you want to say so. Because his glory has shown you something greater. The glory changed me. And it should change you. Because watch this. The glory makes the difference. Everybody standing on your feet.